A national reporter just dropped the bombshell. The Big Ten wants North Carolina ASAP. That's great for us. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. The Big Ten targeting North Carolina to leave the ACC and join its league. Not Florida State, not Clemson, but UNC at the top of the list alongside Notre Dame. We'll start there with TJ Pittenger of College Football Addiction. We'll also get to BYU, Iowa State, Kansas State, even Arizona State are really bad in the transfer portal. And that's great news for those schools. It actually kind of rocks. Why? And we'll finish with Iowa State running out of money. Their athletic department is going broke. They're canceling major projects, and they're kind of questioning where to go from here. Does the Big 12 need to keep Iowa State? I hope so. If you hit subscribe, I get to keep my job. North Carolina, Notre Dame, a major reporter dropping a bombshell. Let's start there.
North Carolina, Notre Dame, big-time targets for the Big Ten, according to a source?
Yeah, that's it. It's not just a source. It's a national source who works for the Mercury News and is reputable, well-known, does a lot of work on the West Coast and for many outlets that you've heard of as well. KSL is one of the big ones. John Wilner says this, and Greg Flugar is the one who actually screenshotted it and posted it. That's an issue worth exploration here, talking about expansion, because North Carolina isn't just any school. It's quite possibly the trigger for the next wave of realignment. The SEC and Big Ten, if they were to conduct a draft of schools not currently in either conference, Notre Dame is first, followed by North Carolina, not Florida State, not Clemson, not Miami. It's Bill Belichick-led North Carolina. It's the Jordan Brandon North Carolina that has not been good at football. But what we know, it's not about your wins and losses on the football field. For the better part of 15 years, Texas was not good. Right now, Oklahoma is not good. Some of these expansion candidates, Maryland, who went to the Big Ten, they have not been good. It wasn't about, your prowess to come in and win a championship. No, it's about brand. The SEC doesn't want another SEC champion. The Big Ten doesn't want another Big Ten champion. They want a USC, a UCLA, who will always have the name, who will always have a brand like Jordan, who will always have a little extra viewership because they carry a whole lot of weight nationally, even if it's in basketball. And when you get that, you've got a winner. Clemson is not on the hot board. North Carolina is. Florida State, not at number 1, not at number 2 on the hot board, which is shocking to me. North Carolina is, according to Wilner. And if this is true, I think it goes to show once again, it's less about how much you win and more about what your name means. And obviously the name North Carolina does mean a lot.
So I'm going to, shockingly, I'm going to push back on this some with some things that I've heard, my take on this, kind of where I would find difference here. But you just said this surprises you, not the Notre Dame piece, maybe more so the North Carolina piece. I think everybody would agree. If any conference could get Notre Dame, they'd be jumping, doing backflips tomorrow. You said you'd be surprised by it. Do you buy it? Because I'm going to push back in a minute, but I don't want my take to cloud what you think. What do you think about this?
Sure, I'm surprised that it's North Carolina and not Florida State. That's probably the biggest piece that surprises me. And I know you're a big Florida State guy, and you'll be able to get into more of that. I believe the international footprint that Florida State has is something that you should want, and the footprint in a state of Florida that is so hotly contested in football, having one of its best institutions is something you should want. North Carolina doesn't scream that for me. They don't have the history in football. Bill Belichick is in his 70s and is a PR nightmare right now. I don't know if those things can carry you confidently into the Big Ten or the SEC, but here's why it wouldn't shock me. The AAU status, their love for academics and being a major school in a pretty strong state in the South, something the SEC loves to collect. Even Missouri and Arkansas, who were ads in the last 30 years of that conference, were the flagship schools of a state that wasn't great at football, but they were a southern state, and you kind of wanted to have a map that's got this territory that's just yours. It's what the SEC has done, so it wouldn't surprise me at all. And from there, it is the catalyst. Wilner kind of mentions it. And I do think this is the one spot where he's really on. It's the catalyst if North Carolina leaves the ACC for total chaos, total expansion, for schools like Louisville to be in the Big 12, for schools like Miami to vie for the Big 10 and fall to the Big 12, or for NC State to beg their way into a conference and Boston College get left off the table altogether. So I'm surprised by the name North Carolina. I'm surprised it's not Florida State or Clemson, but I'm not surprised by the idea that this could be a move in the near future.
A couple of thoughts. I will agree completely. I think North Carolina, outside of Notre Dame doing something that would shock everybody, which I don't expect, I think North Carolina is the catalyst. I will agree with that. Where I think I disagree on the thought process is I have been repeatedly told, and we may wake up tomorrow, and before I get the time to put this video out, North Carolina might be destined for the Big Ten. But I have repeatedly been told that North Carolina is not the Big Ten's major target, but they are 100% the SEC's major target for several reasons. One, you're exactly right. They don't need more powers into the SEC. Will they probably get some, whether that be Florida State, Clemson, whomever? Probably eventually, right? I don't think that Clemson and Florida State both end up in the Big Ten. They could, but my guess would be no. So I agree with that. I don't think they want more powers. You mentioned Texas not being great, but they've certainly turned a corner, it seems like, these last couple of years. And with the resources and money that they're putting into rosters, I think the SEC hurt itself this year by becoming too there's too much parity, right? Mm-hmm. And whereas the Big Ten is very top heavy and their bigger brands got the better seeds and got more teams in the Final Four and things like that. So I think that North Carolina is a huge target for the SEC. I think basketball factors in there too. The SEC, the highest thought of basketball conference as well. And let's be very frank, they seem to be dominating every sport. Number one in baseball, number one in softball, obviously football and basketball we know about as well. I know that'll upset Big 12 fans, but I do think that North Carolina fits that very well. I think the SEC very much values the flagship university of a state, which is North Carolina. It's not, Florida State is not one. Not that that would preclude them, but I do think that that's why North Carolina is a bigger target, all those reasons. I do think, and where I'll disagree with Wilner's thought, where I'll disagree with the overall premise, he may fully end up being right and I may end up being wrong. I do think Florida State is a bigger draw for the Big Ten, which seems very, very focused on TV ratings and become a TV market with three different companies, three different media rights companies that are, broadcast partners that they work with, NBC, CBS, and Fox, as opposed to the SEC, which is just on one. I think that is a big deal. I also think the way that they're expanding, kind of going coast to coast, which certainly North Carolina brings in that coast, but I don't think it would be the market that they would go after, the eyeballs that they would look for. So my thoughts are that I agree with a lot of what Wilner's saying here. I still think, and I agree that North Carolina is even the catalyst. I think them going to the SEC, which is where I think they'll end up, is what is the domino that gets everything else moving. I would agree with that 100%. I don't think Florida State goes to the Big Ten before North Carolina goes to the SEC. I think it all happens the same year, same time frame, but I think they are the catalyst. I'll push back on thinking that they're a major target for the Big Ten at this point. We'll see, though. I don't have a crystal ball just yet.
I'll close my side of the point by agreeing wholeheartedly that North Carolina is going to be that school. We know Clemson and Florida State intend to leave. If a third school leaves the ACC, that's when things are really going to hit the fan. That will be North Carolina, very likely. So they genuinely have to be the catalyst. They have to be. They're the final domino that send us into chaos. And then my other point, TJ, I'm gonna agree with you. I think that Florida State is one right now for me, probably behind Notre Dame, then Florida State. North Carolina, though, is above Clemson. I got to meet and talk to Dabo Sweeney a couple of weeks ago, and I'm always thinking about expansion. Didn't ask him about it, but thinking about it and his thoughts on the program at Clemson. They've built a wild juggernaut in 16 years. His 16 years as the head coach there. But as I'm listening, I'm thinking, man, before that, Clemson wasn't great. And I think when Dabo leaves, we saw Chad Morris, his top assistant, bad head coach. Brent Venables, his top assistant, bad head coach. So when he leaves, I'm not sure Clemson is sustainable past that. So for me, it is definitely Notre Dame, Florida State, North Carolina. Those are the big three to watch.
Yeah, I agree. And I listen, we do really well with Clemson fans on here. This is not a shot. Clemson is certainly a better program as far as football goes, and I know that's why a lot of people tune in, than North Carolina is. They've done a great job with baseball. They're literally top 10 right now in softball. They've had good basketball runs too. I am not diminishing that. I mean, shoot, their women's lacrosse team is really good. I am not diminishing their athletic programs at all, which I think are very, very good. But I do agree. I think North Carolina, from a realignment perspective, that Jordan brand is a little bit bigger. If you were drafting on football alone, shoot, who's going to be ahead of Florida State? I can admit that over the last, now Florida State all time versus Clemson all time. I mean, then you're having a conversation, right? But in the last 20 years, I mean, I'll even admit that as the guy with the Bobby Bowden football back there. I'd put Clemson ahead. I don't think they're drafting or divvying this up based on football success only. I think there's a lot of other things that go into it. Again, Clemson is not the flagship university of the state of South Carolina. I do think that matters to the SEC. I think the Big Ten cares less about that. But always fun to debate, always fun to talk about.
Today's show is brought to you by Upwork. Upwork is where I go as a small business owner. Upwork is where I go to find flexible, top-end freelancers, that talent who can help with IT, AI, web development, marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, they make the hiring simple. That talent can elevate your business immediately. If you need help with a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivers incredible results. Posting a job is free and simple. Within a day, multiple qualified candidates to choose from will be right there. Instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale my business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now. Post your job for free. That's upwork.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business. And do it today with Upwork.
BYU, Iowa State, Arizona State, Kansas State. This is portal madness season, but has it been portal sadness season for them? Like, what's going on there? Why are they not super high in the transfer portal rankings? Like, we're talking about teams that I just mentioned that we expect to compete for. And shoot, if you gave me the odds, I would take one of those four teams winning this thing. Why are they not in the portal at all, man? Yeah,
the word that I would use to describe these teams, the transfer portal, the acronym I would use, the letters I would use are B, A, and D, and that's bad. It has not been pretty at all for Kansas State, Arizona State, Iowa State, BYU. If you ask right now 24/7, hey, where do those teams lie? BYU 16. Iowa State 15, Arizona State 14, Kansas State 13. That's not good, except for the fact that it kind of is. Because what we don't often consider in the conversation of the transfer portal is even coaches like Deion Sanders doesn't want to take 50 guys. Those coaches, they don't want to take 50 guys. How do I know that? Because Deion just took 25 in this last transfer portal class. He has showcased it is a better move to take fewer players out of the transfer portal. Last year's final rankings, BYU 15th, Iowa State 16th, Kansas State 13th. Those were the teams at the top of your conference. Why were they at the top of your conference despite the fact they did not recruit well in the transfer portal last year? Continuity. That word is so much more important than overturn. That you do not want a roster that is going to have to replace 30 guys. You do not want a roster that needs to desperately replace 20 guys even. Instead, you want to be in Kansas State spot or BYU spot. We say we only need the transfer portal to plug a couple of holes. We're missing this, and this that graduated or transferred out themselves. Other than that, we are okay. We're taking a sophomore, a junior that we've grown up in Provo, that we've grown up in Tempe or in Ames or in Manhattan, and we're going to make them great football players. It is no coincidence the top 4 or 5 programs in the Big 12 are at the bottom of the transfer portal rankings because they're doing it the old-fashioned way in college football, the Big 12 way in college football, and having great success with it. They do not want a major shift in their roster from the transfer portal because they do not need one. They instead need continuity and consistency. If you want to be good, you want to be very low in the Big 12 rankings when it comes to the transfer portal.
It definitely is going to be a case study because we see what teams like Texas Tech are doing, and certainly their odds have jumped way up because of the talent they brought in, but you wonder how quickly can that gel? I just saw a tweet before we got on here that in the last 11 days, Miami has taken 7 transfers in the spring window, Drake, of a team that won 10 games last year. in Mario's, fourth year at this point? I think fourth year. Fourth year, a team that won 10 games, a team that plays in the ACC, which is very top heavy, right? We'd say that Clemson and Miami are the favorites to win. At least that's what Vegas says again this year. And so it's very interesting to me to see teams absolutely try and build through the portal and load up that way. And this is not a shot at Florida State's culture or Texas Tech's culture or Miami's culture or anything like that. But when I do think about the programs listed, and I think about BYU, Arizona State under Dillingham, obviously Satake at BYU, Campbell at Iowa State. When I think about some of these programs that you've mentioned, Kansas State too, all of them, I do think about that culture being different. I do think about the culture in BYU. I do think about the culture in Manhattan being different. And obviously, Dilly's the youngest out of those four. Yeah. But you think about those are mainstays, right? And Dilly even being younger, I mean, he's an alum. Like that is his dream. That's not a typical third year head coach by any means. But I do think about the culture being so vital. And the reason I think, and this is maybe me getting on a soapbox at this point, the reason I think those teams consistently play harder, show better effort, win games they're not supposed to, compete in games that they're not supposed to, end up literally being a blown call or a missed call away in a playoff game from winning. The reason I think they do that, there's talent there, right? Let's not pretend that Sam Leavitt's not the best quarterback in the Big 12 or that Scadaboo wasn't the best. There's talent for sure. Retzlaff and all these quarterbacks that are at these four different programs are all really good. But the way that these teams fight and continue to just go blow for blow, I do think that culture is so important at these four programs that you mentioned specifically. Now, I'm not saying that every other Big 12 team has bad culture or that every other Big 12 team is just that, but I do think that it's different specifically at these four. You sent me these four names, not me. I didn't come up with BYU, Iowa State, Arizona State, and Kansas State. But if you asked me, TJ, which four programs in the Big 12 do you think have the best culture? This would have been easily the four that I would have picked. And that's not a shot at anyone else. I think the world of other coaches, Scott Frost going back to UCF, Rich Rod going to West Virginia, other coaches in this conference, I think a lot of. I do think that culture matters, and I'm not saying that portal guys can't bring culture. That's not my point at all. But I do think it goes hand in hand with what you're talking about.
No doubt. And look, if you're a team, a fan, a coach that says, well, shoot, bad news for us. We're top 5 in the conference and transfer portal rankings. If you're Texas Tech, that must mean we suck and don't have continuity. Not necessarily. It's a case-by-case basis. In the case of these four, they are fine. They need not change a thing. But in 2024, again, we asked 24/7, you're top 5 in the transfer portal in the Big 12. You see universities like Colorado, who had a great season last year. You see TCU, who had a bounce-back year, 9 wins. And you see Arizona State finished 4th in the conference last season in transfer portal rankings. They took that class to become Big 12 champions, and like you said, a call away from winning a college football playoff game. Just because your school is recruiting well in the portal, Texas Tech, doesn't mean you're going to be bad. Ohio State did this. They helped revamp their school. LSU, a couple of years back. We see schools that are going to revamp out of the portal because they have to. And when we consider what the Big 12 is doing right now, those 4 teams at the bottom, they didn't need the portal. And a few of these teams at the top, like Texas Tech, They do. Houston, they do. They need as many guys as they can get because either there's pressure on the head coach, they need to win now, something's got to change. Even Colorado still needs to refine its roster. I don't mind them being pretty high up. I don't mind West Virginia having 51 portal commits because they kind of need it. But Kansas State, Arizona State, Iowa State, BYU, they don't. And that's the goal for everyone in the league, to get to that point, to get to that spot where you feel completely comfortable. And that's why those schools right now are the top of their game.
Yeah, it's less about, to me, it's less about the portal being a bad thing and more about how can I keep the wheel going? How can I keep all the cogs in the wheel going at the same pace? And the more newness that you add to it, the more of a ramp up time you need. And we see that all the time. I mean, think about LSU. They like to call, not to dump on other programs or whatever, they call Brian Kelly the portal king or Lane Kiffin LSU hasn't won an opening game in 5 years. And they start out in the other Death Valley this year in Clemson. Yeah. And it is a case of, well, you got a team that was built a lot out of the portal with LSU, and then a guy who it is polar opposites, isn't it, of LSU and Clemson. And, I think about Ole Miss in Florida. Florida didn't take a lot of guys out of the portal this year. They had a nice finish to their year. They've recruited pretty well. It pains me to have to give them credit, but they're not desperate for the portal, whereas other programs feel desperate to use the portal. Hey, we got to load up here. You look at the programs that have built things well, the Ohio States, the Georgias, the Texases. They don't go out and load up in the portal. What do? They use 2 or 3 portal spots for absolute difference makers. Caleb Banks going to Ohio State. Texas pulling in the best tight end out there from Cal. I think that's obviously the model that a lot of people want to get to, where they rely on what they've got in house, and you can use you can cherry pick the portal, right? Hey, we'll use all our portal budget on the 3 elite guys that we want that plug some holes that we're kind of thin at, instead of, hey, man, we need like 30 guys. Now, New coaches, UCF, West Virginia, teams that are desperate to win, right? Florida State went back to the portal all the time. Well, they won 2 games last year. They're desperate to win, right? You needed to get rid of a lot of that roster. I do think it says a lot of good about the programs that we mentioned.
I think so, too.
Doesn't say to me that there's bad for the others, but I do think that Texas Tech is going to be a case study this year. We're either going to say, man, they struck gold, or we saw this coming.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. With the NBA playoffs here, there's no better way to get in on the action than FanDuel. FanDuel has been What's great about FanDuel is I can just add an element to watching a game. It's like an onion. I peel it back. Like, okay, already fun to watch the game. Now I peel the next layer. Oh, really fun to have a vested interest in it. And then, really, really fun to have same game parlays where I can watch one game and be rooting for 2, 3, 4 things at the same time. It elevates the whole experience. You can pick which players are showing up in the biggest moments, and how do you know when they're showing up? You can track that through FanDuel, and those trends help you build your next bet. And you can combine live prop bets mid-game based on how the action unfolds. And you can get a $200 bonus bets to add to your excitement if your first $5 bet hits. New to FanDuel, the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Visit FanDuel today.
Is the bank closed there? Are they out of money? Explain to me the situation of what's going on with Iowa State.
Yeah, man. John Kurtz did a really good video about this. And it's a tough subject to talk about. I thought he did it a lot of justice. And it's a point that I've been making kind of here and there over the course of the last year or so about whether or not Iowa State can sustain itself in the Big 12, or whether or not there comes a day where Brett Yormark and the powers that be in this conference say, hey, look, it's just not working out financially. Do I think we'll get to that point? No, but if there's one university who at least publicly feels close to it, it's Iowa State, based on what their athletic director, Jamie Pollard, has said. Now, they have a full revenue share. They cost the Big 12 as much as any other school to keep their lights on, and they were chugging along, doing at least fine. They were keeping things afloat in Ames without their baseball program, which just means they have less things to pay for. And then the day came where the NCAA and the United States government and NIL and transfer portal and so many factors were added in that the school in Ames, Iowa looked around and said, look, we just don't have the donorship. Bill Gates is in Baylor's back pocket now. Kevin Smith is the owner of the Utah Jazz and is in BYU's back pocket. Texas Tech has a fountain of oil in the middle of their campus. There are schools that are doing just fine in money because they have these external factors that are pouring in so well. For Iowa State, it's the best way to describe it. They're maybe the most blue-collar, passionate, best fan base in the Big 12. That doesn't always equate to money, though. That's what stinks about this is you go to Baylor, McLean Stadium. Drayton McLean was the owner of the Houston Astros. Or you go to Lavelle Edwards, and it's this legendary head coach who's able to pour so much money into a university like BYU because of the money that was made. Rice Eccles, those are big last names for donors at Utah. Jack Trice is named after a football player who was tragically killed on the football field. It's this beautiful story, and I think it's a great reflection of what Iowa State is. They're a beautiful story of hard work and determination. But the two things, the hard work and determination, don't always equal. They don't always equal money. You don't always get revenue from that. So it's a great example of how they do things the right way, They're a great university to have, but they have not been able to necessarily pull their weight financially, and they're running out of money. Jamie Pollard, the athletic director, said, look, if the country's going to give $20 million to student athletes at every university every year, I don't know if we can do that. I can't confidently, like Baylor has this full buy-in or Texas Tech has this full buy-in. I don't know if we can confidently say every year $20 million can come out of my pocket and into that of the student athletes. We've always done things differently, but now you're saying you can't anymore. Traditional college football, college basketball has gone away, and we've got to get ultimately creative. I don't know. And here's how bad it's gotten. He postponed a new wrestling facility that was going to be created. He postponed a renovation plan on not Jack Trice, but Hilton Coliseum, their basketball arena. He said, look, we can't. We can't move forward on these projects because money is an issue right now, and we don't know the future of college athletics. When your athletic director is saying that, while you look around at UCF and TCU and Colorado and see the buy-in there, the money there, it's got to feel really hollow as your Iowa State, Jamie Pollard and company, wondering, how do we put the pieces together? How do we stay afloat financially? And if you're the Big 12, you want to do everything you can to keep Iowa State afloat, but at some level, things could get thin enough that this becomes a rockier relationship, and I would hate for us to get to that point.
Does this feel like a 2-year problem to you? Does this feel like a 5-year down the road problem to you? Does this feel like a 10-year down the road problem to you? Like, I don't know if you have any gauge on that, if you've heard any speculation about this. And then maybe to follow that up, so give us a time frame, and then what are the options there? Start cutting sports, just pay less. Like, obviously there's a cap of what you can pay, but is there like the NFL has a minimum threshold? Like you can't have a salary cap of $20 million in the NFL. What is the timeline, and what is the solution maybe?
Yeah, I think it's now. It's not 2 years. It's not 5 years. The problem is now for Iowa State, and that's hard to say and a hard thing to reckon with. But it's not like Jamie Pollard said, look, hey, we're going to have to tighten up the budget a little bit. He said actively, we're going to stop projects. We're going to stop building. We're going to stop progressing in the way that we wanted to because we're running out of money. And that's not hey, we're going to think 5 years down the line. It's really we're going to think about right now. And if you want to get a little more literal, a year or less, just depending on what the government does. And it sounds like, all intents and purposes, $20 million will go to the student athletes. And while most universities are gearing up for that, I think Iowa State is considering what they can do. And maybe what they do, you've seen different universities across the country get creative with this. A couple have hired GMs to handle their finances. A couple of them have had the school itself kind of resorb their athletic department, because so many of these athletic departments aren't necessarily third party, but they also are kind of disconnected from the college in a way. I think if you're Iowa State, you're going to have to subsidize somehow, and you're going to have to bring in Allstate or someone. I mean, we are Iowa State Athletics presented by Allstate. What if there was a way to combat revenue sharing with your student athletes with brand deals, with major brand deals like the Big 12 was going to do in their version of getting creative, and as they have done with so many different big brands and big logos. That's how creative you've got to get if you're Iowa State. And then from there, if you still say, hey, we only have $15 million in the tank, you don't have to give 20. You don't have to buy all the way in, by my understanding and the way that I've read the legal documents. You can give $10 million. You can give $12 million. Because think about like a school like Western Kentucky. They probably can't give $20 million, but the NCAA is not going to say, okay, it's $20 million or bust. You can do something. Iowa State's probably going to fall in the category of having to do something, unless they reach out to donors and almost kind of GoFundMe this thing, which wouldn't be that rare in college athletics. We saw Vanderbilt start their own GoFundMe for their goalposts after they were thrown in the river post beating Alabama in Nashville last year. So you've got to get creative at this point if you're Jamie Pollard and Iowa State. Not a good spot to be in, not how you want to be. But the Big 12 is going to help until you get to the point where you say, okay, this has been a whole lot of helping. What do we get in return?
You're right. Like collectives are glorified GoFundMes. This is not, something new that, oh man, how could they try and ask people for money? I mean, that's what we've been doing in college football for the last 2 or 3 years now. And so it's not outside of the realm of possibilities. I guess my last question, the way that we'll end this, is what would it take would the Big 12 kick them out? Like, is that an actual concern, an actual worry? And what would be the real reason? Just because they weren't competitive enough, or just they didn't have the money to have enough sports to be in the conference, or what would be the real motivator there?
Yeah, I don't think we're right on top of it, but it cannot be ruled out in where college football, specifically college football, is going. Iowa State's going to have to win. The day that comes that they become a Kansas or become old school Iowa State and just lose perennially, that's when it gets a lot easier to say, okay, we can't keep doing this. And you've seen it with some of the smaller conferences who have moved on or have had complete and utter chaos in their realignment makeup. The Big East has had to say goodbye to universities because they couldn't hold their weight financially. You saw it when the WAC kind of rebranded, and you see the A10 or the Southland Conference, the FCS levels in football. This could creep its way into the FBS the day that the Big Ten decides we can't do Rutgers anymore, we can't do Illinois anymore, we can't do X, Y, and Z, we can't do Northwestern, we can't find a way to justify them being here financially. The second one of those tips over, I think that's when we start to worry about Iowa State. I don't see this happening this year, even next year for sure, but even that next TV contract conversation comes around and ESPN goes, hey, look, we're also cutting corners. We cannot do this unless we consolidate. And as you know, TJ, college football, Power 5 to Power 4, we're already consolidating. We already kicked out Washington State and Oregon State because they weren't bringing us enough money. That could be the fate of Iowa State if things don't change.
Yeah, unfortunately a business, and to the detriment of some of our favorite things about the sport. But I hate it for Matt Campbell's program and really the entire Iowa State program. But at the same time, I understand it if I'm running $1 billion TV network. It is unfortunately not charity. So hopefully they can get it figured out. I've truly always loved watching Iowa State, and so hopefully something that fan base, the donors there, can rally together and get things figured out. Drake C. Toll, you can follow him everywhere on social media. We'll link it in the description, as well as Locked On Big 12. Maybe it'll be, instead of Iowa State Athletics brought to you by Allstate, it'll be Iowa State Athletics brought to you by Locked On Big 12. But Drake, I appreciate you for hanging out, bud.
TJ, always so fun.